Okay, I'll call to order the special meeting for the Parks and Recs Board, Tuesday, August 13, 2019. Can I get a roll call, please?
Member Bartow.
Present.
Member Collier.
Present.
Member Manson.
Present.
Member Eastwood.
Present.
Member Supple.
Present.
Member Harris.
Present.
Chairman Troutman.
Present.
Members Williamson and Howdy Shell are absent.
Okay, we'll go with the Pledge of Allegiance next. Item 4 on the agenda, new business. Action item A, budget amendment. Director.
Thank you, sir. I wanted to say thank you for everyone showing up tonight for this special meeting. I know it's unusual to do something like this, but given the timing of the budget and all of those things presented to the City Council, we want to make sure that the Park Board got to see all of these items. So as we go through each of the individual items, I'll kind of give a narrative, how one affects the other, and go through those and be able to and answer any questions that you have. So item A is the budget amendment. If the board will remember, every year we talk about a capital improvement plan. So every year we pass a new 5-year plan. Ultimately what that means is that we budget for the next year and we plan for the following 4 years. So really the only year that gets budgeted is that year. So in November of 2017, November 1st, the FY18 capital improvement plan was budgeted. That included $210,000 to tear down the park house and to build a picnic shelter in its place. And that particular project was kind of a two-phase because there was 2 projects, even though we lumped them together. We did complete the demolition of the park house. We had it graded. We have grass. That project, that contract has been completed. So ultimately the parking lot's there. The utilities are stubbed out. The park house is gone, and it's waiting for the next project. Why we're here tonight for a budget amendment is staff is recommending that we remove the Recreation Park Picnic Pavilion, that shelter, for a couple different reasons. First and foremost, every year we work off our budget and we put in projects based on what we project sales tax to come in at, because we're always planning for the year ahead. So we're working off trends and projections. So as we began looking at this year's year-end projection and what the sales tax is doing, we've noticed a trend going down in sales tax revenue. That causes a problem, obviously, because that's what funds our projects in our Fund 47. With that projection, we basically, within our projects of what we budgeted, have more money spent than what is coming in with those sales tax, and we simply can't do that. It's illegal. So we had to look at a couple things. This was one of the projects that we are recommending because, number one, it's a project that's not vital for safety or any of that things. This is one of those projects that was a good fit. It was a good project. It was. We know that we'll bring in revenue on it, but it wasn't a necessity, and it doesn't hurt anything for that property to sit there or that location to be empty. Secondly, it had enough of a budget in there that it was able to overcome what we were projecting to be a deficit, and allow us to do a couple other things that I'll explain later on. So that is why this particular project was is being recommended. Plus the fact that we hadn't done it yet, we hadn't started yet. We had to wait so long for the park house land to settle, and before we do that, so that it actually benefits that property to let that the area settle a little bit. So as a financial impact, you'll see the park house demo took about $24,122 out of the 210, so that leaves about $186,000 that we leave in that fund balance. And happy to answer any questions. We have no intentions of not ever doing this project. We will come back to it. It'll just be delayed and talked about next spring when we begin talking about the CIP again. We'll bring it back up and talk about where we can fit it back in. So be happy to answer any questions on this budget amendment, and keep in mind that this particular item, additional questions will be answered as we go through the agenda tonight. So with that, that completes staff report, sir.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? Ryan?
Yes, Director, I know you just mentioned that there's additional questions may be answered later in this discussion of this evening, but is this the only item that will be nixed from this year's plan as far as the recreation playground replacements that are supposed to be coming, I think, at the end of this year? Or is there anything else that coming down the pipe?
Excellent question. Actually, this is the only project that we're recommending to delay or postpone. What this does is, with the fund balance that it provides us, it has allowed us to add in a couple of smaller projects that we've either pushed off or things that have come up. So this particular budget amendment does a lot for our capital projects. So, and I'll explain that later as in the very next agenda item.
Any other questions?
I'll just add one thing, Judge. I'm not sure if it makes a difference in the minutes for later on, but on the timeline for this, it's recommending fiscal year 17 approval. At one point it says fiscal year 18 in an attachment, and then down below it says fiscal year 17 in the timeline. So I'm trying to find the timeline here. It was just here. But anyways, I just, it says background justification, fiscal year 18 on the 2000, which may be accurate, and attachments fiscal year 18 approved CIP. And then down below, it also mentions, sorry, that's onto the fiscal year, sorry, that's on fiscal year, I jumped ahead. Fiscal year 20 recommendation is talking about fiscal year 17 recommendation, so never mind.
Good answer, Ryan. Anybody else? Okay, hearing none, I will look for a motion.
All right, I proposing a motion to approve this action item on budget amendment for the Park House shelter as stipulated by the director.
I'll second.
Okay. Having a first and second, any discussion? Brian?
I do have a question. So we're going to take the 185,878 out of this project to put back in fund balance 847, but one of the justifications was to meet, get the fund balance high enough to meet legal requirements. But if I heard right, you're going to take some of this fund balance to finance some smaller projects. So how far below the legal limit are we in the fund balance? Or would we be?
It was projected at a negative.
These smaller numbers? I'm just struggling to read these things.
It's a projection. When we got the projections, it was around $63,000
Look at all our hits.
below.
It was how much below?
63,000.
63 below.
So when we take that 185, it covers the 63. It allows us to do more. But
110,
I'll
120,
explain. There's a little bit more fund balance being built back in, and I'll explain that in the
Okay.
next agenda item.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Any other discussion? Okay, at this time, I will ask for a vote. All those in favor? 7-4, 2 absent. Okay, action item B, capital improvement plan FY20. Director?
Thank you, sir. So following up with the last agenda item, what we want to do now is look at our capital improvement program that we basically planned and worked on earlier this year. We approved it, I believe it was in March, ready for the city council. same scenario. We typically plan on around $375,000 to $400,000 for projects after we do our transfer to operations. That is kind of the general rule of thumb. Once we got the projections in, we were well below that, so we had to do the budget amendment to cover our deficit, or our projected deficit. When that happened, it still wasn't enough to do the proposed projects that we had talked about in March. So we took a look at these. We were very good in terms of being under budget on our Recreation Park Pond project, so that gave us some fund balance, but not enough to do everything we needed to do, which was why we did the budget amendment. So what we're proposing here is really an amendment to what you are going to recommend to the City Council. What this does is it covers the budget amendment that you just approved. It takes the fund balance or the project balance left from the park, Recreation Park Pond, puts it back into our fund balance, and then we took another look at our projects. Now, we had to look at each individual year because all of our balances were based on 375 to 400,000. We had to look at those and kind of shave some projects back and readjust some things. Keep in mind that the 4 years out, those are just plans. We will come back and look and talk about those. It is a plan. What we're really looking at to approve is next fiscal year, November of 2019 through October of 2020. Hopefully that made sense to everybody. So the projects that we've looked to keep is obviously the playground at Recreation Park, because that is high priority for us from a safety perspective. And then with the additional fund balance from the Recreation Park Pond, we were able to put in a couple more projects that we felt were important. Number one was the Arboretum lights that, if you'll remember, we did a budget amendment, removed them. We said we'd bring them back in. So that was number one to put back in and get that done. So that took care of that. We recommended the next two projects. Number one, for the Johnston Lake fountain. We put a lot of infrastructure, a lot of money into Hawk Ridge Park, and the lake truly has some algae and some issues there. We've made the commitment to improve the water quality. This fountain will be one of those features. It'll be pretty, but it'll also aerate and keep the water circulating, so it'll help us out with that. So this is a fountain for Johnston Lake. And the next project would be the Recreation Park Trail Gap and Crosswalk. So if the board will remember, we just did the enhancement sidewalks around the ball fields and at Recreation Park, but there's a gap from the roundabout to where the rack is. This project completes that gap. Now, one of the council's projects coming up later this year is the sidewalk from the skate park to the roundabout. It's not a trail, it's more of a 5-foot sidewalk, tends to have some flooding issues. We're gonna remove that, fix the flooding issues, and put a 10-foot wide trail in there. What we hope to do is take this little project, lump them together, and do it all at one time, and that way we just complete the trail at Recreation Park and include a crosswalk right there in front of the rack. So we were able, with the budget amendment, saving some dollars with the Recreation Park Pond, we were able to take care of the deficit that we were projecting and add a couple of these smaller projects in. That concludes staff report.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? Eric?
So when they did the Rec Park Pond project, you know, there was some damage and the T-pads were taken out on one of the holes. I know we're waiting to get like some of these projects completed, but I don't see any budget or any sort of forecasted effort to try to fix those things. What's the plan for that?
Those will be taken care of in-house in our operations budget. You're talking repouring the T-pads right there.
There's hole 3's T-pad was taken out. Hole 7's T-pad was broken. Several pins were taken out or gone. Bent, broken, covered up, can't find them. Those are minor things, but
Yeah, all those will be looked at here as soon as summer gets over and the routine slows down, when we put those pads in, it was in fall, we'll do it at the same time.
So you don't think there's going to be any need for budget to adjust that? I mean, we've also talked about doing a redesign on some other aspects of it that may cost some additional costs.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
Well, if we're going to redo the design, that's up to you all there. You're gonna have to bring that up in a work session or for a budget, probably for either next year or the following year, because that's gonna be another, big dollars for what you and I have looked at.
Well, I don't know if it's big dollars. I mean, it's probably relative. I mean, it's lower than these new projects we added, a fountain and a recreation trail gap crosswalk. It'd be less than those small projects as you termed them, so it's not big dollars associated with that. So
One of the ideas we've also discussed is including a line item for maintenance of disc golf within operations budget. So every year there's a dollar amount that we can use to do general maintenance, replacements and stuff like that.
yeah,
That-
I mean, I understand. I knew the pond project was, I won't say over budgeted, but there was enough in there, and it was 150,000, and it was whatever it was, significantly lower than that on the cost. I sort of was wondering if that was going to cover those repairs or not, and then I just didn't. I knew some of it was going to be done in house, but not exactly what was going to happen with the plan.
Well, we also need to make the decision whether it's gonna stay the same or if the holes are gonna be redesigned. I mean, we don't wanna spend the money, pour pads, and then 6 months later go in and tear them out. So I think that's a discussion that we're gonna have to have in a work session sometime on how we want to go about with our disc golf design.
Bill?
Yes, Director. On the fountain at Johnson Lake, where approximately would that be placed? Since it's a fishing lake and there's going to be the pier,
Yep.
I was wondering how that would interact with that activity.
When we did the bid, it's basically in the middle of the lake, so
The bid that we spec'd out, it'll have a pretty good-sized fountain in the middle.
Right.
And there'll also be 4 bubblers, what they call basically just underground or under the water that bubbles up, that just circulates oxygen throughout the pond. Shouldn't interfere with any of the fishing from the banks.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Ryan?
Correct me if I'm wrong. Was there, I believe, did we have a discussion and do some sort of amendment at some point in time to the TB Hannah Park landscaping earthwork? Did we not move some money ahead for that a couple of months ago that we needed to do this year to go ahead and get things going? And then I still see it budgeted for next year, or am I incorrect on that?
yes, you are correct, not incorrect. Part of that is in the CIP, and there, did we do a budget amendment for that? Right.
No.
I think we had talked about it. Honestly, sir, I can't remember. I might have to follow up with you on that one. I've had in my mind what you see is 50,000 for the landscape, which was a project we did a few years ago. We moved it in because that particular work's going to be done with this phase of the project. I'll follow up with you on that. I
Yeah.
apologize, I can't remember.
I just remember some sort of discussion that we had moved
Yeah,
some
we had
money. I
talked
know we had
about-
taken the Arboretum lights and moved that once, and I think we actually moved it maybe a second time to go cover the trail reconfiguration, so maybe we reallocated it twice or something.
We had
that
talked
way.
on a couple different scenarios. I just can't recall which. I'm sorry.
No problem. Yep, thank
But
you.
I'll look it up, and I can follow up with the board in an email on what was officially done on that. Make a note there.
Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, this Johnson Lake fountain, I want to know more about it, because this is the first I've really heard of it, and you said it's a fairly big fountain. So when we say fairly big, does it shoot 20 feet in the air? with 4 to the side? Are the 4 bubblers just located randomly throughout to just move water? Is it lit? Is it cool? It's going to be a backdrop between not only the dock, but also the amphitheater, so it'll be a good picture spot. What's the deal? What's the deal?
Pretty much all of the above. I mean, it's how big it is all depends on what cone you put on the top of it. The cone that they suggested will shoot at about 30 feet in the air. So it's going to be similar to the one out at the middle school off of 58 Highway. It'll look a lot like that. That too has 2 bubblers in it, I think. If you ever are going by there, you can see the bubbles come up. It would look very nice for pictures, yes, especially off the boardwalk. It's going to help with the algae problem that we have out there. We are working on that with the MDC. This is going to, once we get that contained, this is going to help from that coming back the way it's been forever. So, but yeah, I can find out any more information that you want from me or from that. But
It'll be pretty though. It'll give some movement to the water, which, you know, on days like today, I mean, it's pretty sitting still, looks pretty dead, you know, it'll get some movement to the water. So we're pretty pleased with the project and the pricing we got, which is one of the reasons why we decided to propose this project to the board.
And you did say lights. Will there be lights? Will it be lit up?
I can't recall. I can look at the quote and get back with you on that. I can't.
And I don't know, height versus lights. If it was me, I'd lower it and add some lights. But
We have a lot of lights out there at the park as we are right now, so that's not something that would blind any of the citizens there that back up to there, but there are quite a few lights out there.
I mean, I'm talking about underwater lights.
I understand.
Yeah, okay.
I understand that. But it's lit up.
Any other questions? Eric?
Since we're talking fountains, the rec pond fountain isn't on lately. Are we gonna get that taken a look at, or should we consider replacing it?
No, there's nothing to replace in it. We had a lightning strike in Rec Park. It blew out the cameras at the concession stands. It blew out the camera at Public Works, and it blew out our fountain there, the electrical portions of it. We've been trying to get our electrical company come in to take a look at that, and that supposedly should be coming here soon. So just waiting on them.
Melinda?
Is that something we turn into insurance and they take care of that, or?
No, there won't be enough to turn into insurance, unfortunately.
Anyone else? Seeing none, I will ask for a motion.
I move we accept the proposed changes to the FY CIP budget.
I'll second.
Hearing a first and second, any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and put it to a vote. All those in favor? Passes 8, 1 absent. Next up, action item C, FY20 proposed budget. Director?
Thank you, sir. This is what we call the staff requested budget. It's the proposed budget to give to the city manager. He and I have worked on this along with my team to provide Park Board a balanced budget. I will say this was a challenging budget year for us in terms of property values, and our general levy remained consistent, but with the when we add in the benefit package for staff, the raises, all of those things, the personnel, which typically you won't see because of the timing that you get the budget in a normal year, because we're getting late, you're getting to see the actual application of that. We had to go back in and do the balancing part that normally you give myself and the city manager the freedom to balance that. We did that ahead of time, and so what you're seeing now is a balanced budget. Where this affects us mostly is that we did have to increase the transfer from our sales tax to cover those benefits for this year. To keep in mind, though, we have yet to go for a full year of the RAC programming, summer camp, all of those things aren't accounted for. So we'll get a much better picture of what those revenues are going to be next year because we'll have a full year to operate on. So this is one of those things where we're projecting and we're working with the information we have, looking at trends and those things. But what you have before you tonight is a balanced budget. It has been reviewed by our staff, the finance department, the city manager, and we are happy to answer any questions. I will say it is an aggressive budget on our part. We do have some things that we need to do, and we put some revenues in there that we're going to go after and get, and we firmly believe that we can. Otherwise, we would not have recommended this. At the same time, it also revitalized our VERP program in terms of our vehicle replacement. We went back in and completely redone that and made that more usable for our staff. And we're pretty proud of the budget. And that concludes staff report. We are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? See, Brian?
Yeah, I'm just going to make a motion. I move we accept the FY20 budget as presented with authorization for the Parks and Recreation Director and the city manager to make changes if necessary.
Second.
Okay, hearing your first and second. Any discussion? Ryan?
Now that I'm not jumping ahead, this is where the timeline discusses on October 14th and October 28th that the fiscal year 17 budget CIP will have a public hearing and a first reading, just as a note on your guys' agenda here.
Oh. Oh, yeah. My apologies.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good catch, Ryan. Good catch.
That's what happens when you copy and paste.
Yeah,
We've all done it.
I'm not admitting to that.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, I will ask for a motion. Oh, we've already done that. I'm sorry. All this Ryan catching that threw me off guard. At this point, we will go ahead and vote. All those in favor?
Need a second. Oh, did you?
It's
Okay.
already been second, yeah. I messed it all up.
That's okay.
8-4, 1 absent.
I have a couple things, sir, I'd like to.
Go ahead, you have the floor.
So, a couple of things that I did mention in my staff report here on the budget. This is the first year that we have split in terms of the payroll. So if you'll notice, we used to have the Park 25 and then the Rec 26. And then we added Centerview at 27 and then RAC at 28. We went ahead and broke down the payroll so they're accounted to the different funds. So that's a little different as you read through that. We did that for a couple of reasons. First of all, we want to track it and get actual costs so we can apply and know what we're doing. And the second is it's just time. We got 2 new facilities and we need to know what's happening, how they function. So just a couple notes on that part. That way, if you have any questions, feel free to call and ask us. I do have a couple updates on projects that I wanted to give you. If you'll remember in the packet I sent out in July before we ended up postponing that meeting, which ultimately was a good thing because we were able to take care of a lot of these things that would have not been available to you. But one of our CIP projects is Memorial Park Playground at the west side at the Arboretum. If you guys remember that, we did the playground. We applied for a recycled rubber tire grant, and we did have to post it on social media a couple weeks ago because of the grant guidelines, but I didn't want to give you guys this in an email. I wanted to do this in person, which is why it was scheduled for the last meeting, but we were awarded that grant in the amount of $28,000. What that grant does ultimately is it's not a reimbursement, it's not a dollar amount, it's $28,000 worth of additional products. So where the surfacing was, we had that little strip of poured in place surface and the rest was going to be just wood mulch. The entire playground is now a solid poured in place surface. So we're pretty pleased with that. It's a good project for us, and we expect to start work on that in 2 weeks, I believe, is the last week of August. We'll begin work on that. So Yeah, I apologize if you saw the announcement before I got to tell you, but I didn't want to do that in an email. I wanted to do that in person. And also, Hawk Ridge Park, most of you will have seen that you can go down, you can use it, you can drive in it. Absolutely feel free to. We never close the park during construction. It's still open. It's even more open now. The restrooms, as of this week, are open. But we have not had the ribbon cutting yet. You will be invited. We haven't selected and finalized the date. There's a couple rumors out there, but that has not been announced yet. There are a couple punch list items that the contractor has to do before we get our certificate of occupancy. But the park is open. Feel free to go use it, go check it out, tour it, whatever you want to do. If at the next work session you guys want to meet down there and do a little walkthrough, I'm more than happy to do that. But be on the notice for a ribbon cutting coming up within the next couple of weeks as soon as that punch list item is done. That concludes staff report and our meeting tonight, sir.
Excellent. Next, public comment. See none, we will move to board member comment. Rich?
Nothing.
Josh?
I don't have anything.
Excellent. Bill?
I'll pass.
Eric?
I'm good, thanks.
Melinda?
I feel like I should follow suit, so.
Okay. Ryan?
Not going to ruin the train.
Well, I
Brian?
certainly will. Okay, one, on the ribbon cutting, can we not do it at 4 o'clock on a weekday? Pretty please. I like to be there for it, and I work an hour away, so that would suck for me. Two, on these work sessions, and we have to vote on something, can we move it later in the evening? Melinda's a little late, I'm not blaming you, but I'd leave. Where we vote on something, where we have an agenda item, because our regular meetings are at 7, right? I think we should probably do that for a meeting where we have an agenda item. Because we typically do, but a work session, you come in late, you kind of miss some discussion, but she missed the vote, right? And so I would like to just see that moving forward, if that's possible. All right, thank you. Oh, I move we adjourn too.
I'll second
What if I
that.
had comments?
You could discuss it.
I don't have a comment.
I'm going to second that.
All right. All those in favor? Meeting adjourned. Carries.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Mr. Chairman, but, okay.